The snow fell in thick, heavy flakes that December evening, the kind that muffled the city's usual noise and made everything feel isolated and still. The bus shelter where Claire Bennett sat offered little protection from the cold, and she huddled against the plexiglass wall, her arms wrapped around herself, trying to conserve what little warmth remained in her body. She was 28 years old, with blonde hair that fell in tangled waves past her shoulders, and she wore a thin, olive-colored dress that had been meant for indoor wear, not for sitting outside in a snowstorm. A worn brown bag sat beside her on the bench, containing everything she now owned in the world, a change of clothes, some photographs, and the divorce papers that had been thrust into her hands 3 hours ago. Claire stared at those papers now, visible through the bag's open zipper, and felt the numbness that had settled over her deepen. 3 years of marriage ended because her body had failed to do the one thing her husband deemed most important. She'd tried to explain that there were other options, adoption, fertility treatments, but Marcus had been unmovable in his judgment. She was defective, useless, and he wanted her out of his house and his life. She had nowhere to go. Her parents had passed away years ago, and she'd lost touch with most of her friends during her marriage to Marcus, who'd preferred she focus on being a wife, rather than maintaining outside relationships. She'd called her cousin Lisa, but Lisa was traveling overseas and wouldn't be back for 2 weeks. The women's shelter had been full with a waiting list, and the little money Claire had in her personal account would maybe cover a week in a cheap motel, if she was lucky. So she sat at the bus shelter, watching the snow fall and the city move around her, and wondered how her life had collapsed so completely in a single day. She didn't notice the man and children approaching until they were quite close. Looking up, she saw a tall figure in a dark navy peacoat, with 3 children bundled in winter jackets clustered around him. The man was probably in his mid-30s, with dark brown hair slightly disheveled from the snow, and a face that carried both strength and gentleness. The children ranged in age from maybe 6 to 9, 2 boys in green and yellow jackets flanking a little girl in red. The man paused near the bus shelter, and Claire saw his eyes taking in her situation. The thin dress, the worn bag, the way she was shivering despite her best efforts to appear composed. She looked away, not wanting to see pity in another person's eyes. "Excuse me," the man said, his voice gentle but concerned. "Are you waiting for a bus?" Claire knew the shelter had a schedule posted, knew that he could easily check and see that the last bus on this route had departed 20 minutes ago. There wouldn't be another one until morning. But she nodded anyway. "Yes, just waiting." "In that dress? Without a coat? Ma'am, it's 12 degrees out here." "I'm fine," Claire said, though her voice shook with cold and something else. Despair, maybe, or the exhaustion of pretending she was fine when everything had fallen apart. The little girl in the red jacket tugged on the man's sleeve. "Daddy, she's freezing. We should help her." "Emily's right," one of the boys added. "Remember what you always say? About helping people who need it?" The man knelt down near the bus shelter opening, putting himself at a less intimidating height. "My name is Jonathan Reed. These are my children, Alex, Emily, and Sam. We live about 2 blocks from here. I'd like to offer you a warm place to stay tonight, at least until you can figure out your next steps. It's not safe for you to be out here in this weather." Claire shook her head automatically. "I can't accept that. You don't know me. I could be dangerous." Jonathan gave a slight smile. "You're sitting in a bus shelter in 12-degree weather without a coat. The only danger you pose is to yourself. Look, I understand if you're wary of strangers, but I have 3 kids with me, which should tell you something about my intentions. And I can't, in good conscience, drive past someone who clearly needs help. So please, let us at least get you warm and fed. After that, if you want to leave, I'll call you a cab to wherever you want to go. Deal?" Claire looked at his face, at the genuine concern there, and at the 3 children, watching her with the kind of open compassion that children have before the world. Teaches them to look away, and she thought about sitting in this shelter all night, about the very real possibility that she might not survive the cold, about how she had no other options that didn't involve slowly freezing to death. "Okay," she whispered. "Thank you." Jonathan helped her stand, and she realized just how weak the cold had made her. He immediately shrugged out of his own coat and draped it around her shoulders, leaving himself in just a sweater. "Sam, give me your hand." Alex, you hold Emily's. Let's get home. They walked through the snowy streets, a strange little procession, until they reached a comfortable two-story house, with warm light glowing from the windows. Inside, the home was cozy and lived in, with children's artwork on the refrigerator and toys neatly organized in bins near the living room. "Kids, go get changed into your pajamas," Jonathan said, helping Claire to the couch and wrapping a blanket around her. "I'll make some hot chocolate in a minute." "Can we make some for the lady, too?" Emily asked. "Of course." As the children thundered upstairs, Jonathan disappeared into what Claire assumed was a bedroom and returned with a thick sweater and warm socks. "These were my wife's," he said quietly. "She passed away 18 months ago. I think she'd be happy knowing they were helping someone." Claire changed in the bathroom, grateful for the warmth of the sweater and the way the thick socks made her feet stop aching from the cold. When she emerged, Jonathan had hot chocolate waiting, along with sandwiches that she realized with embarrassment she was ravenous for. The children returned in pajamas, and they all sat around the kitchen table while Claire ate and Jonathan supervised homework. It was such a normal domestic scene that Claire felt tears prick her eyes. This was what she'd wanted: a home, a family, children, and she'd been cast out because her body had betrayed her. "Are you okay?" Emily asked, noticing Claire's tears. "Did someone hurt you?" Claire wiped her eyes. "I'm okay, sweetheart. Just grateful for your father's kindness." After the children were in bed, Jonathan made tea and sat across from Claire in the living room. "You don't have to tell me what happened," he said gently, "but if you want to talk, I'm here to listen." And Claire found herself telling him everything. About her marriage to Marcus, about the years of trying to get pregnant, about the tests that revealed she would likely never be able to conceive naturally, about Marcus's coldness, his growing resentment, and finally that afternoon, his announcement that he wanted a divorce, that he'd already found someone else, someone younger and more fertile, that Claire needed to pack her things and leave immediately. "He said I was broken," Claire finished, her voice barely above a whisper. "That I'd failed at the one job a wife is supposed to do. And he's right. I am broken. I can't give someone the family they deserve." Jonathan was quiet for a long moment, and when he finally spoke, his voice was firm but not unkind. "Your ex-husband is a cruel man and an idiot, and I say that as someone who knows exactly what it means to want children and to build a family." He gestured around the room at the toys and photos and evidence of 3 young lives. "My wife Amanda and I tried for years to have children. Years of disappointment and heartbreak. And when we finally accepted that it wasn't going to happen naturally, we adopted, all 3 of them, at different times from different circumstances. And I can tell you with absolute certainty that they are my children in every way that matters. The inability to conceive doesn't make you broken, Claire. It just means your path to parenthood, if that's what you want, looks different than you planned." Claire felt something crack open in her chest, some tight knot of shame and grief that had been building all day. But Marcus said, "Marcus is wrong. And furthermore, a marriage, a partnership, is about so much more than reproduction. It's about companionship, support, shared dreams, building a life together. If he reduced you to nothing but your reproductive capacity, then he never truly valued you as a person. And that's his failure, not yours." Over the next few days, as the snowstorm continued and Claire remained in Jonathan's guest room, she began to see what a real family looked like. Jonathan worked from home as a financial consultant, running his own firm, but he structured his days around his children. He made them breakfast, helped with homework, attended Emily's dance recital and Alex's basketball game. He was patient when they squabbled, firm when they needed boundaries, and affectionate in a way that showed they were deeply loved. And the children, for their part, had accepted Claire's presence with the easy adaptability of youth. Emily declared Claire her new friend and insisted on showing her all her favorite toys. Sam, the youngest, asked endless questions about where Claire came from and what she liked to do. Alex, the oldest and most perceptive, simply offered quiet companionship and seemed to understand she needed space. "They like you," Jonathan observed one evening after the children were in bed. That's not something they do easily. After Amanda died, they became wary of new people, afraid of getting attached and losing someone again. "I like them too," Claire said honestly. They're wonderful kids. You've done an amazing job raising them on your own. It hasn't been easy, especially those first months after Amanda passed. I was drowning in grief and trying to hide it from them. And they were grieving too, and we were all just struggling through each day. Jonathan paused. But we helped each other. They gave me a reason to keep going, and I gave them stability and reassurance. We became stronger together. On the fourth day, the snow